The Earth hadn't seen an alien visit in over 2 decades. At least, not one that anyone had proof of. But that changed for Riven on an ordinary spring afternoon. Riven lived alone near the forest edge in a quiet countryside town, far from the noise of cities. He preferred it that way. His life was calm, made of simple routines. Morning tea, tending his garden, reading old books under the sun. But everything changed the moment a strange silver ripple tore across the sky and cracked. Reality open. He was trimming lavender when the sound hit him. A high-pitched, shimmering hum, like music played backward. The air buzzed, making the hairs on his arms rise. He turned and saw it, a glowing sphere falling from the sky, blazing blue like frozen lightning. It hit the meadow just beyond the trees, gentle but loud enough to shake birds from their nests. Curious and cautious, Riven jogged through the tall grass, heart thudding like a drum. He pushed past the last line of trees, expecting to find a smoking crater or wreckage. Instead, he saw her. She stood there, perfectly still, silver mist swirling around her feet. She wasn't human, not quite. But she wasn't monstrous either. She was tall, graceful, and her skin shimmered with a pearlescent hue, like moonlight trapped in flesh. Her long hair flowed behind her in colors that shifted between rose gold and indigo. And her eyes, oh, her eyes, were vast pools of lilac, filled with something between wonder and exhaustion. Riven froze. His mouth went dry. She looked like she stepped out of a dream, or maybe a secret corner of the galaxy. Then she spoke. Her voice low and velvety, with a slight chime at the end of her words. You are not like the others. I don't know who the others are, Riven said slowly, unsure whether to smile or run. She tilted her head. You don't run. That's good. She took a step forward. I require shelter. Are you hurt? He asked, watching her movements. Fluid, unearthly, like liquid silk. She touched her side, where a faint glow pulsed beneath her tunic. No, but the fall was not smooth. I am Lysira of House Venthal. You may call me Lys. Lysira, he repeated, tasting the name on his tongue. I'm Riven, and yeah, I have a place nearby, if you don't mind a small cottage and strong tea. She blinked slowly, then smiled. Strong tea. That sounds like something I might enjoy. The walk back was strange, silent, filled with stolen glances. Riven didn't know what to say, and Lysira didn't seem in a hurry to explain. She walked beside him like a queen in exile, her feet never quite disturbing the grass. At one point, her hand brushed his and he felt a jolt, not pain but warmth, like a sudden spark of sunlight through a cloud. When they reached his home, she paused at the door. You live here? Alone? She asked. Yeah, he said, opening the door. Just me, and now, you, I guess. She stepped inside, looking around with an expression between awe and curiosity. Primitive, but cozy. He chuckled. Well, thanks, he made tea. She sat on the floor, cross-legged, watching him with the kind of attention no one had ever given him before. She was quiet, but not distant. Curious, but not invasive. And when he handed her the cup, she cradled it like it was a delicate relic from a lost world. She sipped and closed her eyes. This is divine. I shall reward you for this kindness. Riven raised an eyebrow. Reward me? You don't need to do that. Her eyes opened, narrowed playfully. We'll see. There was something in the way she said that, teasing, maybe even flirtatious. He wasn't sure, but his heart beat faster. Later, as night blanketed the sky, he offered her the couch, laying out a blanket. She examined it like it was a puzzle. This is soft, she murmured, then looked at him. You will sleep beside me, yes? What? In my culture, closeness brings trust. Besides, I get cold easily. Your heat is useful. His face turned red. You want me to sleep next to you? She smiled slowly. Don't just stare, Riven. Her hand slid toward his. The same spark from earlier tingling in his fingers. Touch it. Riven didn't move at first. Her words echoed in his head, soft and charged with something he couldn't explain. Lysira watched him, calm and sure, like she hadn't just said something that completely fried his brain. He swallowed hard. You're really not from around here, huh? She tilted her head. That is obvious, but I sense something else. You're uncomfortable. Did I speak wrongly? No, it's not that, he said quickly. It's just, we don't usually talk like that so fast. You know, when we've just met. She blinked, her violet eyes flickering. How slow do humans go? Riven scratched the back of his neck. Some people take weeks just to hold hands. That sounds inefficient. He chuckled, even as his heart thudded. Maybe. But it's how we figure things out. Like, what we want. What the other person feels. Lysira considered that, then softly touched her fingers to his wrist. Her touch was light, but it hummed through him like an electric current. I know what I feel, Riven. Your presence makes my pulse flutter. That means something among my people. He looked into her eyes and saw no deception, only raw, honest curiosity, maybe even affection. Well, you're not the only one feeling something, he said. Her lips curved upward, the kind of smile that made the room feel warmer. Good. They sat close that night. Not in the same bed, not yet, but on the floor by the fire. Riven wrapped her in a quilt, and she leaned against him like it was the most natural thing in the universe. I've studied Earth from afar, she said, her voice quieter now. Your species is loud, wild, but also gentle in surprising ways. That's an accurate summary, Riven said with a half smile. What about your people? Disciplined, distant. We do not touch easily, but when we do, it means we trust deeply. I have not trusted anyone in a long time. He felt her fingers slip into his, gently intertwining. She was warm, her skin soft like petals under moonlight. There was something almost childlike in her need for connection. But the way she looked at him, intense, focused, made it clear she understood exactly what she was doing. Why me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Because you didn't run. You didn't fear me. And when you smiled, it felt like gravity around my heart. He blinked, stunned at the beauty in her words. You say things like that so easily. I only speak what I feel. Isn't that the way of your poetry? Riven laughed, his chest tightening in the best way. You might be the most confusing and fascinating woman I've ever met. Good, she murmured. Then let me stay. A little longer. A gust of wind outside made the windows creak. She pressed closer to him. The fire crackled, casting amber light across her glowing skin. He looked down at her as she looked up at him. If I ask something, will you answer? She said. Of course. She touched the center of her chest. This thrum I feel. It happens only when you're near. Do you feel it too? Riven nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. Then, we are synced. Synced? He asked. It's not love, she said, her tone almost apologetic. But it's the start of something rare. The start of wanting. Needing. That hit him hard. No one had ever described feelings like that to him. Not so boldly. Not so sincerely. She moved her face closer, close enough that he could see tiny, iridescent patterns blooming across her cheeks like soft, shifting tattoos. I want to understand you, Riven, body and thought. Don't keep distance between us. I am not fragile. He stared at her, heart pounding. You don't scare me, Lysira, but you're overwhelming. I'll be gentle, she whispered, unless you ask me not to be. He laughed again, breathless. I'm starting to think you're not as innocent as you look, she grinned, a flash of mischief lighting her face. I'm not. The fire cracked louder, the room wrapped in soft, flickering light. Riven didn't pull away when she moved her hand to his chest just over his heart. There. It beats like mine. She laid her head against him again. I like it. And somehow, without needing to speak more, they just sat there, warm, connected, their hands still locked. She didn't press further. Not yet. But her presence felt like the beginning of a spark waiting to become flame, and deep in Riven's chest, something bloomed, something tender, unfamiliar, and terrifyingly beautiful. The days that followed felt surreal to Riven, like he was caught between the quiet world he knew and something wild, something magnetic that was pulling him into a new orbit. Lysira stayed, her presence both calming and exhilarating. It wasn't just her alien nature. It was the way she seemed to make everything around her shine brighter, more alive. The world felt different when she was near. They spent hours talking about their lives, their cultures, their worlds. Her stories of House Venthal, a place in the stars where her people had once lived in peace before war scattered them across the galaxy, were both awe-inspiring and tragic. She spoke of her home with longing in her voice, her eyes distant, as if she could still see the shimmering citadels in the sky, the endless fields where her ancestors had once walked. Riven, in turn, shared his simple life, his love of the earth, his passion for growing things, the quiet moments he treasured. He'd never realized how much he had missed having someone to truly talk to, someone who listened, who didn't just hear, but felt the words between them. But it wasn't just words that drew them together. The space between them was charged, in a way Riven couldn't ignore. Lysira's every movement seemed to hold an invitation, and every glance she gave him made his heart race. One evening, after dinner, they sat on the porch. The sky had turned violet, the stars beginning to twinkle as the sun dipped below the horizon. Lysira leaned against the wooden railing, her fingers tracing the edges of the boards, her eyes locked on the stars above. What do you think of when you look up there? Riven asked, his voice soft, almost afraid to break the peaceful silence. Lysira looked at him, her eyes gleaming in the fading light. I think of the worlds I've seen, of the stars I've traveled, but mostly, I think of home. Riven didn't. I know what to say to that. He understood the longing in her voice. He had a quiet home, the kind that felt safe and rooted, but he had never been far from it. He could only imagine what it would be like to be separated from everything you had ever known. You miss it a lot, don't you? He asked. I do. But you've given me something I did not expect, comfort and warmth. He felt his chest tighten at her words. I'm glad. She turned to face him, her eyes searching his face with an intensity that made him feel like she could see right through him. You're different, Riven. I don't meet humans often, but I can tell. Your soul is not like the others. He laughed nervously. My soul, huh? That's a bit much. She took a step closer, her gaze never leaving his. It's not. It's just the truth. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, she reached out, her hand sliding up his arm until it rested on his shoulder. The warmth of her touch sent a jolt through him, and he froze. The air between them was thick with something unspoken, something both exciting and terrifying. Lysira. Her finger pressed gently to his lips, silencing him. "Don't speak. Not now." Her voice was a soft command, but there was a tenderness to it that made his heart flutter. Slowly she moved closer, until their breaths mingled. She was so close now that Riven could feel the heat radiating from her body, could smell the soft, floral scent of her skin. And then, without warning, she kissed him. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't rushed. It was slow, deliberate, like she was tasting the very essence of him. Her lips were soft and warm, and as she kissed him, Riven felt something deep inside of him stir, something that had been dormant, something that yearned for connection. When they finally pulled apart, both of them breathless, Lysira's eyes shone with an almost mischievous glint. "You didn't run," she whispered, her lips curving into a smile. I didn't know." "I was supposed to," Riven replied, his voice shaky. He was still trying to make sense of what had just happened. She laughed softly, the sound like a song. "No, you weren't." For a moment neither of them spoke. The world seemed to hold its breath, and Riven wondered if everything he had ever known was about to change. Lysira stood close, her body pressing against his, her hand resting on his chest, as if she could feel the rapid beat of his heart. "Riven," she said quietly, her voice low and full of meaning. "There is more I want to understand. More I want to know," he swallowed, feeling a lump in his throat. "What do you mean?" "I mean, us. What we could be. What you could become to me." He wasn't sure how to answer. There was a part of him that was afraid of how quickly things were moving, afraid of the unknown. But there was also a part of him that wanted to say yes, that wanted to see where this strange, beautiful thing between them could lead. Before he could find the words, Lysira's lips were on his again, more insistent this time, and this time he didn't hesitate. His hands found their way to her back, pulling her closer, and for the first time in his life, he didn't question his instincts. He didn't need to run, and for the first time he allowed himself to touch what had been just out of reach. The days that followed felt like they were unfolding at the speed of light. Riven had never imagined his life would take such a sudden turn. Everything was different now. The gentle rhythm of his days was now filled with something new, an energy, a longing, a connection that was both thrilling and terrifying. Lysira was still a mystery, in many ways. Her stories of her people, her planet, and her travels had opened a window into a world Riven could never have dreamed of. She spoke of the stars as if they were old friends, of ancient battles fought in the void between worlds, and of a civilization that once thrived in peace but was now scattered across the galaxies. Yet despite the weight of her history, there was something undeniably human about the way she looked at him, something that made Riven feel like he was the most important person in her universe. But there were moments when the reality of her alienness became undeniable, like the way her skin seemed to shimmer under the moonlight, or how her eyes would glow when she was deep in thought. There was a strange, magnetic pull to her presence, something he couldn't quite put into words, but couldn't deny. One evening, as they sat outside by the fire, Riven asked, "How did you end up on Earth, Lysira? You said you were from a place far from here." She stared into the fire, her eyes distant. "I came because I was chosen, in a way. I was sent to observe, to learn. But the war came, and everything changed. My people are fractured, scattered. The peace we once had, it's a dream now." Riven watched her, feeling a deep sense of empathy. "I can't imagine what that must be like. To lose everything. Your home, your people." She nodded slowly, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I do not speak of it often, but with you, I can. I feel safe. She turned to him then, her violet eyes catching the light from the flames, and something shifted in the air between them. There was a silence, heavy with unspoken words. Her gaze was steady, focused, and it made Riven's heart race. She leaned in slightly, her face soft with an emotion he couldn't quite identify. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, I feel something for you, Riven. Something I have not felt in a long time. He felt his breath catch in his throat. What do you mean? He asked, his voice barely more than a murmur. Lysaira's eyes softened, and she reached out to touch his hand, her fingers gentle against his skin. It is difficult to explain. My kind does not fall in love easily. We do not connect with others the way you do, but with you it is different. I cannot deny it. Riven's heart pounded in his chest, and his mind raced. He had always thought of love as a slow, careful thing, something that built over time. But with Lysaira it was different. It was fast, intense, almost overwhelming. There was a rawness to it, something primal that tugged at his very soul. He didn't know what to say. He didn't have the right words for this. All he knew was that the pull between them was undeniable, and it was growing stronger every day. You don't have to explain it, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I feel it too. Whatever this is between us, I feel it too. Lysaira's gaze softened, and she took another step closer. Then let us not fight it, she whispered. Before he could respond, she kissed him again. This time, it was different. It was deeper, more urgent, as if something inside her had snapped, something that couldn't be contained any longer. Riven's hands moved to her back, pulling her closer, his body instinctively reacting to the heat of hers. He could feel the electricity between them, the connection sparking every time they touched. As they pulled apart, breathless, Riven could see the vulnerability in her eyes, something that was rare and precious in a being so powerful. Lysaira, I don't know what this is, but I don't want to lose it, he confessed, his voice low. You won't lose it, she replied softly, her hand resting on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her fingers. I will not let you. The night stretched on, but neither of them noticed the time. They were lost in each other's presence, in the space they shared, in the feelings that swirled between them like a storm. For the first time, Riven felt truly alive, truly seen. Lysaira's touch, her warmth, it all felt so right, so perfectly aligned with something deep inside him. But as the night wore on, a thought began to gnaw at the back of his mind. A question he hadn't dared to voice until now. He turned to Lysaira, his brow furrowed with concern. What happens when the others come? I mean, there are people out there, right? Your people. They might be looking for you. What if they... She placed a finger to his lips, silencing his fears. Not yet. There is time. I will stay with you. And when the time comes, we will face it together. Riven didn't ask her what she meant by when the time comes, though he wanted to. Instead, he simply nodded. He didn't want to think about what might come next. Not when everything felt so perfect in the moment. He pulled her close again, his arms wrapping around her as if he could protect her from whatever the future held. In that moment, everything was still. Time didn't matter. The world beyond his cottage didn't matter. All that mattered was the woman in his arms, the one who had come from the stars and into his life. And for the first time in a long time, Riven didn't feel alone. They were together. And somehow, that was enough. The days blended together, each one more intense than the last. Riven's world had changed in ways he never could have imagined. Every moment with Lysaira felt like a dream, a beautiful, impossible dream he didn't want to wake from. She had become an integral part of his life, her presence like an anchor, grounding him in a reality he never thought he'd experience. But there was a growing tension, a quiet unease that lingered in the air. Riven couldn't ignore it. He had noticed how often Lysira would look up at the sky, her gaze lost in the distance, as though searching for something or someone. She had told him time and time again that there was no need to worry, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something big. It was late one evening when the feeling finally reached a boiling point. The night was cooler than usual, the wind stirring the leaves in the trees, and Riven sat on the porch, staring out into the dark horizon. Lysira had gone inside, but he couldn't help but feel restless. His mind kept returning to the same question. What if they find her? Lysira had kept her promise, but the quiet longing in her eyes told him that the time was nearing. He could feel it. She had stayed longer than she ever intended, and now there was a sense of inevitability hanging over them. Both. The world outside their little sanctuary was vast, and it wasn't going to let them live in peace forever. He heard the soft shuffle of footsteps behind him. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. He could feel the pull of her presence, the way she seemed to fill the space around him with an energy he couldn't describe. Lysira's soft touch rested on his shoulder, and she sat beside him, her warmth enveloping him. "I can feel your worry," she said softly, her voice like a cool breeze in the night air. Riven looked at her, his gaze meeting hers. "I can't help it," he admitted. "I know something's coming, and I don't know what to do about it." Lysira's eyes softened, and for the first time in days, she seemed uncertain, her usual confidence flickering. "There is nothing to do except wait." "I don't want to wait," Riven said, his voice tinged with frustration. "I want to protect you. I want to protect us." She took his hand, her fingers gentle but firm. "You already are protecting me. You've given me something I haven't had in a long time. Peace. That is enough." But what happens when, before he could finish, a strange sound echoed through the air, something alien, something far beyond anything he had ever heard before. It was a hum, deep and resonant, as if the very air itself was vibrating with power. His heart leaped into his throat. He knew what it was. Lysira stood abruptly, her eyes wide with alarm. "They've found me." Riven's pulse quickened, but he refused to panic. He couldn't. Not now. Not when it mattered most. He stood, quickly grabbing Lysira's hand. "We need to go. Now." "No," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I cannot run. Not again." "But we—" "You don't understand, Riven," she cut him off, her grip tightening. "They will come. I have no choice in this. I've known it for a long time. The galaxy, it's not as kind as Earth." The hum grew louder, closer. It was undeniable now. Something was coming, and Riven's heart raced with the realization that the peaceful life they had built was about to be shattered. "We have to fight," he said, his voice full of resolve. "We can't just stand here and wait for them to take you." Lysira's gaze softened, and she cupped his face with both hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You cannot fight them, Riven. Not like this. They are far more powerful than anything you've ever known. You cannot protect me in the way you want. But I—" Her voice faltered, but she steadied herself. "I will protect you. I will make sure you're safe." Riven shook his head, his heart aching. He couldn't stand the thought of losing her, of not being able to do something to help. "I won't let you go, not without a fight." Lysira took a deep breath, then nodded. "Then fight with me." Before Riven could respond, the ground beneath them shook, a deep tremor running through the earth. The sky overhead seemed to ripple, as if reality itself was bending. Riven had never seen anything like it. He turned to Lysira, his eyes wide. What is that? What's happening? Her face was pale now, her body trembling slightly. They've arrived. In an instant, there was a flash of light, brilliant, blinding. Riven instinctively shielded his eyes, and when he looked back, there was a figure standing before them. Tall, imposing, and unmistakably alien. A warrior from another world. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The figure's skin glowed with an otherworldly light, and its eyes seemed to pierce through Riven's soul. "You know why I'm here, Lysira," the alien said, its voice cold and authoritative. Lysira stepped in front of Riven, her body blocking his, her face resolute. "I do, and I will not go with you." The alien's gaze shifted to Riven. "You would choose a human over your own kind?" Lysira's voice was steady. "Yes, I would." Riven's heart thundered in his chest. He didn't know what to do, what was happening. But one thing was certain: he would stand by Lysira, no matter the cost. "Then you leave me no choice," the alien said, raising its hand, a faint glow forming around its palm. "But know this, I will not be gentle." Before it could act, Lysira's hand shot out, and with a single fluid motion, a wave of energy erupted from her, sending the alien flying back. She turned to Riven, her face tight with concentration. "Get inside, now." Without hesitation, Riven grabbed her hand and ran for the door. As they sprinted inside, the door slammed shut behind them, locking them in. Riven's breath was ragged, his mind spinning, but one thought echoed above all others. He was not going to lose her. Outside, the battle had begun. The world would never be the same. But no matter what, Riven knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would fight for their future, for their love, whatever it took.